Alexiev. He is a native of Bulgaria. He received his graduate and postgraduate education at UCLA. For over 30 years, he was employed as a senior analyst at the National Security Division of the RAND Corporation, as well as several Washington, D.C. think tanks. He writes frequently for national publications such as National Review, as well as hundreds of articles on national security topics. Also, Mr. Alexiev has authored approximately a dozen books. Lastly, he is a co-founder of the Coalition of Labor, Agriculture, and Business, CoLab, and he is currently a member of their board of directors. CoLab is our biggest advocate for our property rights. Please welcome Alexiev.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you to all of you for being here on this beautiful day. As Dan mentioned, I was not born in Atascadero, but rather east of here, way back to the eastern part of Europe. And one distinction that gave me is that I did live in Tyranny for 22 years of my life. Eventually decided that I couldn't stand it, ran away, came here 40 years ago. And America, you people, gave me the most precious gift of all, the gift of freedom. So I have lived for the past 40 years as a free man, raised my kids, did my work, went through the daily tribulations of life, and yet today I am running scared. I'm scared because I fear that my kids and their kids will not have that precious gift of freedom if we continue as a country on the course on which we have embarked. And I'm not really afraid of jackbooted government thugs coming, knocking on my door in the middle of the night and carting us off to a concentration camp. It is much more, less immediately scary than that, yet ultimately it is more scary. Because what is happening today is that we have people in Washington that, like all totalitarians of past ages, believe that they know better than we do what is good for us. And they're willing to stop at nothing to impose that false vision. So what do they believe in? And this is something that all totalitarians, past and current, have in common. They believe in the unlimited primacy of the state over the individual, of the government over the citizen. And if we allow that to come to pass, that will be the end of this republic, which was based on exactly the opposite principle. It was based on the principle, a sacrosanct principle, that we, as individuals, have inalienable rights given to us by our Creator. And these people that do believe that they know better than we do what's good for us are willing to stop at nothing to impose their vision. And let me give you just a few examples, because we have already experienced in this country things that should not have been allowed to happen in a free republic as the United States was. There is an organization called National Labor Relations Board. President Obama appointed 3 people to it illegally. He claimed that the Senate was in recession. It was not. Recently, a federal court declared that appointment illegal and unconstitutional. And yet, the man that runs this board said that he disapproved. You see, a bureaucrat disapproved of the court decision and was not going to observe it. This, ladies and gentlemen, is how you embark on the road to serfdom. President Obama confiscated the money of the bondholders of General Motors, totally illegally and unconstitutionally, and gave them to the union members that had brought General Motors to the brink of bankruptcy themselves. That, ladies and gentlemen, is not only unconstitutional, it is again the way you end up in tyranny. And to give you just one more example that you all are familiar with, we now have something called Obamacare becoming the law of the land, although we all know that many states are challenging it, and I hope that it's not going to come to pass. But anyway, what Obamacare does is tells us as free individuals in a democratic country that we have to buy insurance from somebody that the government designates. This is no different than living in communism and having only one store to go buy bread from, or a gas station to buy gas from. That, again, in my view, is embarking on the road to serfdom. So what we have here is, and we have to understand, in order to be able to fight this this thing that's coming down the pike on us, we have to understand what is the strategy of these people that are ultimately, in my view, trying to destroy this country, at least the way it has been for 250 years. And it is fairly easy to see by just looking at their actions what they're trying to do. The left strategy to destroy the United States the way it was, and it still is, and to fulfill their vision, totalitarian vision, I will say, because these people, in my view, as a famous philosopher once said, they all suffer from what he called the totalitarian temptation, the idea that they know how to fix problems of humanity if they only had the power. And so this strategy of the American left, of which our current president is a prime example, but unfortunately he is not the only one. There's a very large percentage of our population that has succumbed to this siren call. It's a twofold strategy. It's I would call it a stick and carrot strategy. The stick is a frontal assault on the fundamental principles that make us a free people. It's an assault, as Andrea said, on our Second Amendment, and you cannot remain free people unless you're an armed people. Let me give you just one historical example, because people forget that guns are inanimate objects, and they could be good or evil depending on who is behind them. Guns in the hands of patriots, good people, are force for good. Guns in the hands of criminals and totalitarians are force for bad. And God knows 200 million people have died because of guns in the hands of totalitarians. So let me just give you one example of what that means, what the armed populace means. You all know that in the late 30s, Germany had built the mightiest military machine in the history of mankind until that time. It invaded every single neighbor it had, except one. And that was the smallest and the weakest neighbor. It was called Switzerland. Now, why did they not invade Switzerland? The Wehrmacht General Staff did a study and presented it to Hitler. And they said, yes, we could take over Switzerland in one day, no problem. But Switzerland is armed to the teeth. Switzerland has a citizen army, and every citizen from the age of 20 to 42 is obligated by law to keep gun and ammunition, a rifle and ammunition, currently an assault rifle, in his house. So yes, we could take it over, but if 1 in 20 resist us, we have to keep 10 divisions in Switzerland to be able to control them. And Hitler said, it's not worth it. Let's leave them alone. That's what it means to be to have guns in the hands of of the right people. And by the way, there are two nations that have the same citizen armies, Israel and Switzerland. And you look at their crime rates, look at their murder rate, they're the lowest in the world because everybody has a gun. If we had the same thing here, legally, we would probably be in the same shape. And by the way, if you look at gun rates, I don't need to tell you, you can look up at the statistics. Look at the 5 cities that vote overwhelmingly for Obama. Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, New York, Chicago, and L.A. You take these numbers away, and this country has a very extremely low homicide rate. It just shows you something. So the assault, the stick of that strategy is assault on the Second Amendment, and I think we have Sam here who is much more conversant in it to tell us about what is going on and what needs to be done. The second, as important, perhaps even more important, is a direct assault on our property rights. America became America because of our private property rights. Let me give you another example. I'm sure you have heard that in the past 6-7 years, there has been what's called a shale gas revolution. America is now the largest producer of gas in the world. Do you know why? Do you know why this is not the case in Europe? It is because of our property rights. Because in this country, everybody that has property has also the mineral rights to it. In Europe, the government has the property rights. And needless to say, we have an incredibly successful gas revolution in this country, which is not happening in Europe. Our property rights are under assault, I think, as Andrea again said, by things such as so-called smart growth, which is not only stupid but downright reactionary, because it seeks to destroy the elemental basis of the American economic success: independence, economic independence from the government. Smart growth, Agenda 21. We don't have time to go through all of this, but let me assure you that 100 long-range planners in San Luis Obispo do nothing all day but conspire to destroy our property rights.
And getting paid well for that.
And finally, the assault on our freedom of speech. It is not as obvious, not as perhaps easy to see. But look at the so-called mainstream media, and you will see increasingly a gigantic propaganda machine for the left. Look at our newspaper here, the Tribune, and it is nothing but a propaganda rag. This is something that has very serious consequences for our democracy. And thank God for the internet and for free people networking like we are here, and that is really something that we need to continue. The 3 main television networks are all in the hands of the left. So 4 out of the 5 largest newspapers in the country, so most cable stations, with the sole exception of Fox News. So this is the stick, the assault on our rights. To me, however, what's even more dangerous is the carrot. And the carrot is essentially bribing Americans to start believing that the government, rather than their own honest work and labor, is their benefactor. More than 150 years ago, the best analyst of America, what America was all about, is a Frenchman by the name of Alexiev de Tocqueville. And he wrote, again, more than 150 years ago, and I will give you the quotation because it is amazing in its visions. He said, "The American Republic will endure until the day Congress discovers that it can bribe the public with the public's money. This is what is happening today, ladies and gentlemen, and it has devastating consequences for the cause of freedom. And if you have bothered to study some of Obama's speeches before he became president, from the very beginning he has always argued that he didn't like the American Constitution because it did not allow for the redistribution of wealth. So if we allow this to continue, for the government to bribe certain parts of the population so that they become wards of the state, that is perhaps more dangerous to our freedoms than anything else. And let me give you some figures because they are shocking and most people don't know them. In 1960, about 6% of the federal budget went to as direct payments to individuals. Do you know what it is today? 65%. And it's 65% which is given to 50% of American households. Half of the American households now receive direct payments from the federal government. Is it any wonder that 40% of the population that derive their livelihood from the government in one way or another would always vote for whoever promises them more government? This needs to stop. So 65% by this year probably of government spending goes to payments to individuals as transfer payments. That's over $2 trillion a year. And these, by the way, are $2 trillion we do not have. We borrow them. We borrow them from China, we borrow them from elsewhere. So we are borrowing half of our budget to pay to individuals so we can bribe them to vote for the government. Ultimately, however, I'm optimist. And the reason I'm optimist is a very simple one. Maggie Thatcher put it best quite a few years ago when she said, socialism has no future because sooner or later
They will run out.
socialism runs out of other people's money. And that is going to happen here too. However, in the meantime, they may be able to destroy this country economically. But, so what is to be done? On the face of it, the situation, especially here in California, is hopeless. We have a one-party state. We have a Republican Party which I'm sorry to have to say that is totally dysfunctional and has proven that in spades last elections. And yet, as the old saying says, the night is always darkest just before dawn. And let me give you my take on why I think we should double our efforts to fight this assault on America, and that there is a cause of optimism. The best cause of optimism is that you guys, we all are here and willing to fight back, to take back our country. And this is repeated in every single town in these United States, and it's gathering, I think, very great potential force. So, why do we think that, or do I think that there is a cause for optimism? We're here in the city of Atascadero. You may remember some years back, Atascadero had a leftist majority on their council, and they were trying to pass outrageous property right abuses such as the creek setback and all the rest of it. Well, the good people of Atascadero took things into their own hands. They formed an organization called the Better Atascadero, and for the past many years now, they run the city. Good conservative citizens run the city, and the city is coming back. In fact, I was just talking to Roberto Fonzi here a while ago, and I suggested to her that maybe they should try to incorporate Paso. And I said, well, we don't want their problems. But this is one example of how you can turn a city around. And city by city, we can turn this state and eventually this country. 4 years ago, after Debbie Arnold was defeated, a handful of people got together and formed an organization to fight for property rights. It's called COLAB, as you heard Dan say. This organization has now become a real force in the government, forcing the board of supervisors to listen. We have a truly unique individual by the name of Mike Brown, who is our leader, who is always there, and he has an army of mostly ladies that my wife, who is one of them, calls the activist chicks. The supervisors, the lefty supervisors have a different name for them. They call them the mob, and they are afraid of the mob. And look at what they have done just in the past year or so. We elected Debbie Arnold, and now we have, I hope, we have a majority of decent people on board. Then, if you bother to see, by the way, I suggest that everybody that's a Tea Party member should be a member of COLAB, because that organization is really doing amazing things. So, what they did during the past year, the leftist majority on the board of supervisors and the planning department, which is made up of people that for whom my grandfather used to say that they have both feet firmly planted in the air. These are people that are product of leftist American architectural schools, planners they call themselves, who have never worked in private business. What they know is that they want to change things in a way that they think things should be. Eliminate a single family home and put us all in 500 square feet apartment boxes, because that supposedly is good for the environment. Well, last year they tried to make the first move in this. It was called the Ag Cluster Ordinance, which would have taken millions of acres out of development, and by doing that, devalue the land of these property owners and do tremendous damage to agriculture. As you all know, farmers have to actually put their land as collateral in order to get loan to do their harvest. Well, they try to do that. They try to damage our most promising industry in this country, which is the wine industry, by limiting the so-called event ordinance, limiting events that could be held by people that have the property. Well, if you look at the latest plan, both of these initiatives have been postponed indefinitely. It is because of Mike Brown and the activist chicks that this happened, because they were in their face every single week and never let them get away with it. So let me finish by saying that what we need to do is we all need to be activist chicks. We need to network, we need to be in their face, we need to defend the principles of America. Thomas Jefferson once said that freedom is never more than a generation from extinction. I think we should pledge to ourselves and to our kids and their kids that we refuse to be the generation that let freedom become extinct.